plastic for this stuff. All right. Good evening. I'm calling together the council meeting for August 23rd, 2022 at 6 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Mayor Thompson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Estes.
Here.
Councilmember Hinton.
Here.
Councilmember Corey.
Here.
Councilmember Rick.
Here.
Councilmember Applegate.
Here.
Councilmember Duncan.
Present.
7 members present.
Thank you very much. We'll go on to presentations. We got an extra council member out there tonight with their opinion, huh? All righty. Council 4.1 presentations, department update to council by the planning department. Ms. Martinez, welcome.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having me. Christy Martinez with the City of Fountain Planning Department. I'm going to keep it super simple because the planning department gets into the nitty-gritty details of a lot of things within the city, and I don't want to get too muddled in the details of it. So the planning department's made up of 3 full-time staff, myself, and then 2 planners, a planner technician and a planner too. Year to date, we have currently looked at, or currently have 50 plus active projects, which range anywhere from single family residential to commercial to annexation requests to land use development for laying out their land uses on master planned communities, final plats, preliminary plats, and everything in between it. We've also looked at 190 year to date plot plans, which includes any new homes, miscellaneous uses, which are garages, sheds, decks, those types of things. Within there, we have had 42 single-family new homes year-to-date. So far, most of those have primarily been within the Ventana South development, which is in their currently working on their second phase of 4 phases. And we've approved 3 commercial development projects. Those are the StoreQuest self-storage facility on Fountain Mesa, the Grindy multifamily apartments over here on the west side of 85, adjacent to the Fountain Creek Regional Park, and then Discount Tire, which was one of the last pad sites at the Mesa Ridge Crossing, which is where Maverick, Discount Tire, what else is over there? Quick Quack, and Dutch Brothers. Within the planning department, we also oversee a lot of the governing documents. We have Title 17, which is our zoning ordinance of the Fountain Municipal Code, Title 16, which does an overview of the subdivision regulations, so anytime somebody wants to split property. We're also looking at currently updating our comprehensive development plan, which is also a strategic priority, which John and Scott will touch on later in the agenda. And then we're also looking at making some changes to Title 17, primarily to come into compliance with state changes that occurred at a state level that do trickle down to the local government. So we want to make sure that our codes are consistent with those regulations. A lot of the commercial development that we're seeing, we have 4 commercial sites currently under construction up at South Academy Highlands, which unfortunately is not on this area, which is up by Sam's and Walmart at South Academy and Venatucci. That is really their last 4 pad sites that are currently under construction, which are, Panda Express, Slim Chickens, which is a quick service restaurant, Arby's, and then a auto parts store. They're also currently reviewing, our department's also currently reviewing plans for a second hotel adjacent to the Holiday Inn up there. Some of the larger residential projects that we're working on is the Corvallis development, which is planned for approximately 1,200 single-family residences and about 35 acres of commercial, which is located near Fontaine and Mark Shuffle, which is shown on the right-hand side of the screen. We're also reviewing amendments to the Mesa Ridge development, which is owned by Norwood. Their primary focus at this point is bringing in more multifamily development to the community. So we're working through that process and will come before council at a later date for review and approval. Ventana South on the southern end of the community, as I mentioned briefly, is working through their second phase currently of 4 phases. Their second phase also contains a large park area, about 3.5 acres, which will complement the existing community center, their pool, and then a larger multi-purpose and playground at the northern end of the development. Let's see, the large area of Mesa Ridge Crossing and owned by Lasardi's, which is right at the southeast and southwest corner of Mesa Ridge and Syracuse, is our large commercial node. It's really where we're seeing a lot more of our commercial interest. We have the Watermark Apartments, which is going on the eastern boundary of that, right behind the Advanced Auto and Walgreens, which is 336 multifamily units they are currently working through the review process and hope to have that under construction sometime next year. We've also seen UC Health express some interest in this area as well. However, nothing has been solidified at this point. And then that's really where we're going to see a lot of our commercial development. The Markets at Mesa Ridge area is basically built out. I think there's one pad site that's still remaining on the north side over by Family Dollar. They currently have a plan for a multi-tenant building to be constructed on that property, which will complement the existing multi-tenant uses that are currently within that area. We're also continuing to work with the Riverbend development, which is at the far northern end of Highway 85 and Main Street, which is planned for commercial development in there. That was the former Fountain Valley Shopping Center that in recent years they've demoed the building and is currently sitting vacant as they're finalizing their development plans with the city. That developer is also working on a residential project within unincorporated El Paso County, which will be directly west of that. That part is not within the city. We have no control over that, but it is planned for single-family detached homes. But I think that's really a high level of what we're working on. I try to keep it super high level because the planning department really does get into the details of the nitty-gritty of what can I do on my property to what's being built down the street.
So Christy, when you say something is going through the review process, what it kind of just generally, what does that mean and how long does that sometimes take? Because sometimes people hear a name of a something coming and everybody gets all excited, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And then it just seems to take a really long time. So just kind of general, just real general.
So the review process could go anywhere from 4 to 6 months to longer, depending on the actual land use review of it and what applications need to go in. The first step in the review process is where somebody approaches the city and says that we have an interest in developing a piece of property. They'll have a pre-application meeting where they will sit down with multiple agencies within the city, planning, engineering, water, electric, sanitation, get the idea of what improvements need to be done on that property in order to fulfill those development proposals. They then go back and hire their own consultants to prepare those documents, whether it's a traffic impact study, a drainage study, the development plans, their subdivision documents, which are prepared by surveyors, so that takes some time on their end to hire the consultants, prepare those documents. And then they're submitted to the city for review. City staff review them at a technical level to make sure that they meet all of our rules and regulations. The project meets safety standards for drainage, is compliant with the city's MS4 permit surrounding stormwater detention and drainage. We look at traffic and coordinate with CDOT on access if they're in proximity to Mesa Ridge Parkway, Highway 85, or I-25. And then if there's a public hearing process, it will go through that process, which will go before Planning Commission for a potential public hearing, and then on to City Council for a public hearing before it's approved. There's a multiple layer of processes. Some of them are public hearings, which come before boards and commissions within city government, and some of them are administrative review. So it's kind of a combination of both. So when you hear something through the rumor mill and you might think it's true, it's possible, but it might not come to fruition until you start seeing dirt until 9 months, a year, 18 months later, when you start seeing the dirt as they work through that approval and review process.
Okay, I was just wondering because, you know, a lot of times people say, oh, it's the city holding them up, but it's just a really long process.
There
to make
is
sure
sometimes
everything-
a review process.
And it's dependent on the property. If they're trying
Absolutely.
to rehab something, it can be easier or harder than a
Yes.
blank piece of land, so.
Absolutely.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, Todd?
You know, one update, I'll just let everybody know that's kind of been a hot topic, and that is the possible Grocer location down off of Old Pueblo Road, next to the sanitation building. I spoke to Mr. Legree, and yeah, Christie's showing the location. I spoke to Mr. Legree week before last, I think it was, and asked him, you know, did he have a timeline when we could start helping him, those type of things. And to quote him, I asked him if I could use the quote, Karen, and he said he's reading the tea leaves right now of the economy, staffing issues, what's going on, but he believes he's probably at least 2 years out. So there's no reason to think anybody's holding anybody up or anything else. That's totally the decision of the landowner.
Right.
And he currently, that land hasn't been closed. He's just under contract with sanitation.
But he thinks business-wise, and he makes those final decisions.
Sure.
He's still at least a couple years out.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for Christie? Mr. Councilmember Rick?
Yes, thank you for coming. I appreciate your presentation. Two questions. Earlier this year, Brandy Williams came in and said that the engineering department was getting multiple submissions over and over again. She was having to review the same thing like 9 times, and she proposed a fee for anything more than 3 submissions. Are you guys having to go through that multiple submissions? Is it costing you more time and more money? Do you anticipate needing a fee for those multiple reviews?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that fee applies to planning as well for multiple projects.
It does.
So it wouldn't, if a project has more than 3 reviews, it wouldn't get assessed a fee for a planning review and an engineering review.
Okay.
It would just be the additional fee for each subsequent review after the 3, which would encompass whether it's water issues they're still working through, engineering issues, planning issues, or any other department issues until that project comes to fruition. Part of the problem is everybody is so busy in the land development world that we are getting some poor quality submissions of projects, and they are relying on city staff to do the consultants' jobs, to review it and quality control it. So in order to try to cut down on the poor quality control of documents being submitted to the city, we're implementing this fee to hopefully encourage them to put a little bit more work up front to cut down on the time reviews on the back end.
Okay, thank you. The second question I have, you talked about UC Health expressing an interest. Can you share anything about that interest? And before you answer, the reason I ask is there's a rumor out there they're building a hospital in Fountain, a complete hospital. And I
You
was
want me to
like,
take that one, Christie?
Well, I haven't heard a complete hospital, but if you'd like to take that, but we don't have a formal submittal
Okay.
yet. So I haven't seen anything in black and white, literally black and white,
Okay.
of terms of what they're building. But they have expressed interest in media outlets. I believe it was in the El Paso County Advertiser News that they are looking to place some sort of a medical facility, whether that's physician offices or some hybrid.
Yeah, and when we met with them, they basically said they wanted to start that construction, but again, that clock doesn't start
Yeah.
until it's officially submitted.
Yeah.
But what they explained to us, it would be as a 20,000 square foot, 1-story medical facility, not a hospital.
Okay.
They will keep their emergency urgent care that they have up off of Fountain Mesa, and they said that is very active and busy. So this would basically just be a medical facility with different medical departments within that 20,000 square feet.
okay, thank you. That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Good questions, thank you. Anybody else?
Yes.
Oh, I can't see names here, so. Okay, all right, thank you. Ms. Duncan?
So I'm glad to see that we're getting a Panda Express, one of my favorite places. But we hear a lot of complaints about sit-down restaurants. So is any of that in the works for Fountain?
We don't currently have anything submitted and under review for any type of a sit-down restaurant. I know Kimberly Bailey with Economic Development is working diligently to market the city to these retailers, but really it's at their own pace and their own, business models, whether or not they go through that site selection and we meet that site selection. But currently we don't have anything under review.
So if you go to your favorite steak restaurant, fill out that thing on the bottom of the receipt, right? And put where you want it.
Yes, fill out those surveys, 3 minutes, and maybe you'll win a gift card.
Well, I don't care about that. Maybe we'll win a steakhouse, right?
That's right.
Any last questions from anybody? All right, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Before our next presenter comes up, I do want to make kind of a public service announcement. We are going to be discussing with the police department some of the situations that happened in Uvalde. So if there are young children listening, we're not going to be doing anything super descriptive. We're not going to be showing any photos. However, if you do have young children or children that might be sensitive to discussing school safety, and especially at the elementary school level, we do suggest maybe that you turn your volume down or maybe make sure they go in another room and do something else for a little while we're discussing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Thanks for giving us this short amount of time to talk about a very important subject. The chief came to me about a month ago and had asked me to prepare a little presentation along with Lieutenant Mallett here regarding not necessarily what happened at Robb Elementary, because I think we all know what happened there, but what is Fountain Police's plan and what is our response to an incident like that would occur. And we're lucky enough to have some District 8 representatives here tonight too that are going to kind of help us along so we can get everybody to understand kind of where we're coming from. So again, everybody knows what happened at the elementary school. Here in my hands I have the 78-page report that I've read back to back, cover to cover. It's a very good report. I would recommend each of you, if you have the time, to sit down and read this report about some of the shortcomings, pitfalls that happened at that school on that day. Not only from law enforcement perspective, but also from school's perspective on some of the security measures they weren't following, and definitely some of the shortfalls that the law enforcement and the police response did not accomplish that day. A couple of things that I want to highlight, and this is really from a command standpoint, you know, after the event has taken place, because knock on wood, we surely hope that nothing like that ever happens in our community, but we have to prepare that it will. And I know all of us in the room here with Lieutenant Mallett and District 8 personnel, we're prepared. And we're going to explain a little bit of that to you of how we're prepared tonight. A couple of the things that I thought were highlights from that day in Uvalde, Texas were, from the law enforcement perspective, the police officers that responded on scene simply didn't apply the training that they had received, and that every police officer across the country has received this very specific training on what to do when there's an active shooter at a school. It's countrywide. We've all had it. Every police department has had it. It's just a matter of applying the training when this event takes place. One of the biggest things that didn't happen, one of the most important things that didn't happen that night, was an incident command. And I know some people in the room here are very familiar with incident command, but what that is a command post, a stationary, whether it be a trailer, a back of an SUV, or something that controls all of the people that are coming in to help. At that particular day, there were 376 law enforcement that responded to the school that day through the 73 minutes that event took place. 376 officers that were not controlled by anybody. Nobody took command of that situation. That was detrimental to the entire event. And in this report, they talk about how the failure of an incident command probably cost some lives that day. Because there were police officers running around, everybody wants to help, but there has to be a head coach to tell the team where to go. They did not have a head coach that day. That's one of the things. Another thing that's very important, I think, for everybody to know is that in Texas, it's very common, specifically in Uvalde, where the school has its own police chief, and the city of Uvalde has their own police chief within the same jurisdiction. That doesn't happen here anywhere in Colorado that I'm aware of. Definitely not here in Fountain. We have one police chief. We all know who he is. And the school does not have a police chief. They have security directors, they have security personnel, but in an active shooter situation, it is known that the police is going to take command of that situation. We don't have competing police chiefs, and that was a little bit of the problem that day, is you had the school police chief who was first on scene with a couple of his officers in the school while the shooting was taking place. That chief, while trained, I don't think really was prepared for that day to come to one of his schools. And I say that because he mislabeled that day as a barricaded subject, which, if anybody knows what that means, a barricaded subject as opposed to an active shooting situation is a completely different response for police. Barricaded subject means they're barricaded by themselves, they don't want to respond to police commands, they don't want to come out. But there's no real imminent threat to human life. That was not the case this day. When the chief responded with his officers on scene, there was active shooting, there was active dust flying from the drywall from the shooter, and those three officers left the scene and didn't respond as they should have. And Lieutenant Mallett's going to get into what District 8 and what the police response is if something like this happens in one of our schools. And one of the last things I want to mention is just communication between the agencies. Here in Colorado, specifically this region, we all have the ability to communicate with each other through our radios. You can see Lieutenant Mallett has a school radio and a police radio. She'll get information from the school, and she'll immediately relay it to us on our police radios. We have great communication, and we have other means to communicate besides just the radios. We have push-to-talk on our cell phones. We have a whole myriad of ways that we can communicate. There was no communication from when the school police chief left the scene for him to receive information from the school itself. There were 911 calls coming in from the school, from staff and from students, trying to say what was happening, and the police chief didn't have that information. There was also no incident command for him to do anything with the information if he got it. So with that said, I don't want to get into a lot of the details because that's going to be Lieutenant Mallett. She's going to talk about what our response is going to be if something happens at one of our schools.
Thank you. It's very unfortunate that any community or school district would have to go through something like this. There were several mistakes made, and I think for us to honor the victims of that situation is how we study and progress forward and change our tactics if we need to, and things like that. So there were a lot of factors related to some of their mistakes. From February of 2020 to May of 2022, they had 50 basically what we call lockouts, lockdowns, secures, however that district does them, based on their bailouts. Because Uvalde is a border town, they have a lot of immigrants that are crossing the border. When those immigrants get caught and they run from a vehicle, they lock down these schools. So think about, for us, we probably do 1, maybe 2 a month if we're lucky. And this school's being locked down 50 times from February to May. So it gives you that hey, it didn't happen, you know. It's like we tell our cops, you go to 100 burglaries and they're all just false alarms. Well, that 101th one might be actually somebody breaking in, right? So it's that compliance piece that they kind of get into and that mindset. They didn't have 3 of their exterior doors locked. We try on a daily basis to keep all our school exterior doors locked at all times, and our interior doors. We are okay with staff locking their interior doors and propping them open. There's a lot of movement during the day. Teachers don't have the opportunity to always stop their instruction and go in and let a kid in that went to the restroom and got locked out. So we do call it locked and propped, and that's acceptable, except for the exterior doors. The exterior doors are always locked and never propped. And if we find one propped, we address it. We talk to the staff, and we go from there. So they also have their PD, right, specific to that school district. They have 9 buildings and 6 officers. That's different than us. Fountain, in-town schools, we have 7. I have currently 10/11 SROs. My 11th one is on a little bit of light duty, but he's still active participant. So I have SROs in every building. It's a deterrent. It hardens that soft target. People come up, they see the cop car. The community gets to know us. There isn't, especially elementary, there's an elementary SRO in District 8 that can walk the streets without somebody knowing them. Or if they see us in the streets, they're like, hey, do you know Officer Donna Jordan? That's my guy. That's how those kids are. So that's a different culture for us, and that's a benefit for our community and how District 8 runs. They, just like Commander said, the chief set up his active shooter plan, and his plan was to be incident command. And everything is great. I can write down the best plan in the world. I can do all the documentation, but if I've never practiced it, do I know if it works? You know, if you don't teach your kid how to drive, the first time they get in the car, are they going to know how to do that? It really looks like when you read the report that they probably had all those pieces in place, but it doesn't appear that they ever practiced them, and they didn't practice them within their communities, right? So each agency practicing. We work in county all the time, and so we get used to their officers. They understand our tactics, CSPD, and then we work on joint tasks. If we have an incident that involves multiple agencies, a lot of times we get together and try to debrief that and figure out what we could do better next time. They have the alert training, which is the FBI's, you're fine. The FBI's standard response. We've done some of that. And that's just the FBI trying to provide agencies that unified training, right? But if you go to any tactical place, any tactical guys, everybody has their own little spin and their own little spicy stuff to how they do tactics. Fortunately, with Fountain, we have a lot of training. Our PD goes through a lot of training so that at least our officers have the same tactics over and over. So when we talk about the shooter, these are things that we look for every day when we're dealing with kids that might be having some odd behaviors. There were several people that knew this student's odd behaviors. They joked about him being a school shooter on online gaming. He made inappropriate comments on his online gaming. And nobody reported it, right? Nobody reported it to those games. And so when we debrief these, or when we have that benefit of hindsight, almost every time they've laid out some sort of their plan. They might not have exact details, but we work closely with the FBI here in the Springs area, and she calls me directly on my phone, like, hey Tara, I got this. What do we know about this kid? Is he in your district? And if he's not in mine, he's in District 3 or wherever. And we work that out all the time so that if there is those little things that come up that we might be able to be alerted to, we're gonna investigate. And he couldn't buy guns until May 16th. He bought a lot of ammo. He bought a lot of stuff prior to prepare. On May 16, when he turned 18, he bought guns. His family knew he had guns, and I think sometimes you just don't want to believe that your family member is capable of that, right? We don't want to believe that somebody that we care about or we raised has those thoughts, but this is how this went down. When the call comes in, right, there's a teacher outside and they see the attacker and they radio to staff. They continue on. Some of the teachers inside the building reported that they heard gunshots or stuff outside. They started the lockdown process even though they didn't have it. The school didn't utilize their intercom system. This is a major threat. It doesn't matter if the school knows or if the suspect knows that the school knows, right? We want everybody in that building to know, to be able to have those moments to be able to lock down and get into a safe position. And like I said, we have the benefit of SROs in our building 100% of the time, every day that they're school. He shoots several rounds, 100 rounds at least. The chief and the other officers in the building, they made an error. They looked in room 110. Room 110 had cleared out for recess, so that room was empty. They made the assumption that the other rooms were empty also. We can talk about tactics and all that. No one will ever be able to beat them up more than themselves, right? Like, they have to live with it. We just need to learn from it. So he enters some of the doors. There's bad Wi-Fi. They rely on a Raptor system to notify the teachers. A lot of teachers don't get it. Some of the teachers do. And the actual rooms we're talking about, they were able to lock down. But the door didn't lock. The door was ineffective. It had a faulty lock. You could lock it, but it took a lot of effort. They didn't tell the right people. They never put in a work order. It never got fixed. I'm not saying that would have changed things, but it might have slowed things down, right? And then when the officers get into, this is where they made their biggest mistake. They get in, they hear shots, so they're in the building. That's an active shooter response. We train our officers that if there's no sounds of that violence, you're on a hide and seek mission, right? We are seeking. We know something happened here. Until that building is clear, we're not giving up the ground we already took. And for them to pull out and call that a barricaded suspect, that was probably the most fatal mistake that the officers made at that time. Because they were already there, they needed to continue until they knew that building was secure. Not assume that he's just barricaded in an empty classroom. And that assumption was what they did. So they hear, like I said, they heard the shots. They didn't hear any screaming. They didn't hear any sounds. The communication was down. They didn't know what was going on. He talked about the officers the chief didn't have his radios. I wear 2 radios every day, all day. I've been in this district off and on since 2009. I've always worn 2 radios. Every one of my cops wears 2 radios. We're in constant contact with the front desk, the front people, all of the administrators. We even have the district level on a command channel. So if one of my schools calls for an emergency, we switch to that channel so that if we need to go support another building, I can send resources to that other building based on that radio communication. And we do it all the time, right? We do it, hey, we have an evacuation for an unplanned fire alarm. There's smoke, whatever. We're going to go help and get those kids safe and evacuated and whatever we have to do, and then we go about our day. And they didn't adjust their plan when they found out there were victims. They didn't change that they were going from a barricaded suspect. And I think that's why the delay was so long for them to get into the building. And like you said, with no command center, nobody took the initiative to be like, do I go in? Do I not go in? And so they just didn't adjust. They just weren't planned. They didn't ever test out their planning. So we talk about our PD here, right? We do annual tactics training days. We do scenario and reality-based training. We've learned most officers are better learners by doing. So we rep. We do live action rep. We work with simunitions. We work with, it's one thing for me to clear a building if I don't think anything's coming back at me, but you pull that little paintball gun out, it's a reality check like, oh, you weren't behind that wall. I could see you. You just took a paintball to the arm. That teaches us, right? That gives us those scenarios in our head so that we can replay if that situation ever comes up. We do active shooter training. We shifted quite a while ago to single officer response. Active shooter used to be where you had to wait for a team of 3. We taught that for years. Columbine changed some of that, right? That we can no longer hold and wait for a SWAT team. You are the SWAT team. It's us. And now we've switched to training our officers. If I'm the only one in that school and I hear active fire, I'm going. I'm going to radio as much as I can, but my job is to find it, neutralize it, and prevent as much injury as possible. And then my officers are confident in their skill. They don't have to ask for permission. One of the officers asked for permission to shoot. He didn't get a response, he didn't shoot. Thank goodness, it was a teacher. He didn't have a clear look on what that suspect was. Sorry. So my SROs, I told you we have 11. We have 3 at the high school, 2 at the middle school, and then 1 at Welty, and 1 in one of our middle elementary schools. They waited based on getting keys. Yes. Talking too much. Thank you. Sorry about that. It's all good. You're saving my life right here. So all of my SROs have master keys and key cards. I can get into any building anytime I need to, as can they. That provides a lot more bodies into buildings quicker. All of my cops are like, well, what if I can't get in? Guess what? There's a lot of glass windows in a school. You better be finding a tactical rock and get into that building. We teach them. We teach them it's okay. If you know something bad's happening in that building, get in the building. We'll worry about the why later. Get in the building and stop the threat. We train with District 8 staff. We've done active shooter training several times. COVID changed a little things that we weren't able to do it as much, but we're going to get back to that, right? We're going to get back into that reps. We have a great working relationship with District 8. Not all school districts or police departments can say that. They can't say that guaranteed every day you have an SRO in a school. Fountain can. And that's because our chief knows the mission. He wants us in there 100% of the time. And District 8 does too. And because of that working relationship, there isn't a day that you won't have a cop in a school. We are there to protect those kids from the time they get there to the time they leave. It's the best we can do to prevent it, right? Can't 100%, but that's a good thing. We've taken, each year we learn, right? And we're taking new security measures at the high school where kids are wearing their IDs so that I know what kids, because the high school kids look the same. There's almost 2,000 over there. I can't remember all of them. That will help us identify them. And it helps our officers come in. Just because I know the high school staff doesn't mean the next officer does. So the fact that they're wearing an ID badge helps us to make sure we know who we're looking for. And our PD personnel knows their roles and understand their role, right? And we give them that ability to make those decisions. And then that's my team. So I am obviously the lieutenant of the unit. Sergeant Matt Sanchez is sergeant, and then Don Kling is our corporal. But if you look at every one of the officers up there, every one of them is a leader in their school. And if you ever have any question if they're what they're doing and if they're our leader, go to their schools. Go visit them. They will brag about their kids. They love them like their own. And they'll brag about what they do all day long. And that right there is the best prevention we can do at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara.
Do you guys have questions?
Lieutenant Mallett.
Does anybody have any questions before?
Before we go on to the next part, any questions? Councilmember Rick?
Yeah.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, you know, we'd be remiss if we didn't have Dr. Montina Romero come up with District 8. District 8, as Tara said, is probably the most supportive school district I've ever worked with. As we know, they help pay for our officers in a big way, and that is instrumental into us being able to provide 11 officers in the schools. And our relationship with District 8, and like I said, I come from a different state, and it's never been like this. I hope you saw the passion in Lieutenant Mallett and how passionate she is about her job, and every single SRO that works with her is just as passionate. And this is important to us. And again, thank you for allowing us to talk about this a little bit. Dr. Romero.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you to the Fountain PD for allowing me to participate in this presentation. I want to start by saying, Lieutenant Mallett, there's pros and cons to having a good partner, right? A good partner's involved, and sometimes I think Lieutenant Mallett and I have different perspectives, which makes the partnership so great. Because I'm about human behavior. I'm a psychologist by training, and that's how I approach school safety, is human behavior and prevention, and have no doubt that when it requires a response, that Lieutenant Mallett has that covered. So I think with both perspectives, our schools are safer. 7 years ago, 8 years ago by now, Chief, I'm not sure, the district had a decision. We did not have enough SROs in the schools. We were working on whether that was possible through the city, and the district was investigating whether a private police force or a private security crew would be better than working to make sure we had SROs in the school, because it was hard. It was a hard transition for the city. I think it was a hard transition for the district. And with the chief's partnership, like Lieutenant Mallett said, the right decision was made, because I have no doubt that the Uvalde situation is compounded by having two separate entities that were responding. We also read the Uvalde report as a district, and our administrators were given portions of the report. Lieutenant Mallett focused on the response, but there were so many errors in the prevention piece around facilities, around adult behavior, that really we had to look at as a school district. So that's where the focus comes on my end, and prevention is a heavy piece of that. As Lieutenant Mallett said, that communication is so important. I can think of 3 instances that happened this week and weekend where Sergeant Sanchez and I were talking about a picture where a student posted, and it was sent through Safe to Tell with a picture of a weapon, actually not Safe to Tell, through a management system called Gaggle. We have a computer system that monitors any inappropriate use of technology and posting of pictures that would be inappropriate. And that was sent to us, and Sergeant Sanchez went out. We just identified that that wasn't a threat, but that it was, what are those called? Airsoft weapons. Not a real AR, but it looked like an AR in the picture, and we investigated. That kind of proactive behavior lets kids know, hey, we're not going to take any potential threat lightly, and we're going to be involved, and we're going to be responsive. The other thing that happens is threat assessments and suicide risk assessments. There is a portion of a threat assessment where an SRO has to be involved. We have to have them involved to make sure we're not missing any community behavior, and we're working on that proactive piece to provide plans, provide other settings for students that may be a threat to the school. So all of those things are prevention. I want to talk a little bit about facilities. I don't want to take up too much time, but facilities are a major I think commitment from the district, capital projects, as you've seen if you've gone to any schools, up to 5 years ago, we didn't have secure entries. We didn't have vestibules for people to come in, wait, be vetted before they come into the school. And actually, our expectation is that you don't need to be inside the school, outside of the vestibule, unless you have business there. And before, you would check into the office, and then you would have a free reign of a school. And now we have vestibules comfortable, they have seats, they have a welcoming atmosphere, but we're not having people come in the school. And our secretarial staff know that they can at any point say, nope, I'm going to get an SRO or an administrator to come before you're allowed in the building. So all of those things, the commitment from the district on the facility standpoint, the commitment from the city and the district to support funding SROs, and then that partnership and understanding that the human behavior piece is just as important as the response piece, and that we have to work together, I do think create safe schools. Can you ever be prepared enough? No. But when I look at that Uvalde report, I can check off a lot of things that between the city, the Fountain Police Department, and the school district that we've paid attention to, and that we're going to continue to pay attention to as we move forward to keep our kids safe. So happy to answer any questions, and thank you for the opportunity to present.
Thank you. And I know myself and probably some other council members up here have been to those trainings at the school and watched the teachers go through them. And it's very real. You come out feeling like really something happened. So thank you very much. I know Councilmember Rick, was your question for Dr. Romero or for the police officers?
For Lieutenant Mallett.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
2 questions.
Sure.
First question, we approved funding for a repeater in the middle school. Has that gotten installed yet?
They are working on that.
We're waiting on a part.
Okay.
So the district also approved the funding for the rest of that repeater.
Okay.
And we're waiting on a part. My understanding is that it will be installed in September.
Okay, thank you.
And that helps too. But fortunately, our school radios work pretty well, so our cops are at least able to talk to us if something's going on.
Okay. Second question. You're the leader of the SRO team.
Correct.
Is there anything else you need that we can give you to make our schools safe? I'm stepping on the chief here.
That we can budget for you,
And absolutely, I really appreciate that. Right now with the working relationship, we really get what we need. I mean, we don't always get our wants,
Yeah.
right? But
Chief wants a Ferrari, but that's okay.
yeah, I'm good with that. There's things that, the great thing too is if there's a need, Chief will bring that up. We're looking at how big the high school campus is getting. I think the next thing is that whether they want to, my cops are gonna be on bikes a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because that campus is almost a mile and a half around if I have to go around the other side. I had a kid on the football field the other day I had to run out there too. It's a lot,
Yeah.
So we keep in shape, we try to do our best. And, we're doing some things, additional training with teachers and staff this year that we haven't done before. And we're doing individual stuff. So right now I think we're really good, and I really, really appreciate the support because, like I said, everyone up there, they go into those buildings protecting those kids like their own.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, give me a little heart attack there. Is there anything you want me to do? Oh, man, phew, and my heart stopped, man. Okay, Councilmember Hinton?
Yeah, not a question, but more of a comment. Being ex-military, I kind of break everything down into acronyms or, abbreviations. So I just came up with a quick one, CCP, and I think we all need to remember that. It's communication, complacency, and prevention, right? And you guys talked about that tonight. Not only for our officers, but for our citizens. We need to communicate, and we can't get trapped in complacency. It does kill, literally. And we need to be able to learn from these lessons that have happened across the United States. And these are lessons learned. Unfortunately, it's hindsight, but these are good for us to be able to learn from that because of the certain events that have happened. It will benefit us to be a better city. to have a better police department, better fire department. All these things can be done, but we will need your help to do that. So as we talked about this tonight, please take this all in. This is very important. It's not something that you can just kind of just wash away and hope that this does not happen in our city. Because the realistic of it is, it could happen in our city. And we have the watchmen on the tower. And these men and women are watching over your children each and every day to make sure that they come home to you at night. So please, as we move forward, investigate about our public safety. And anything that you want to investigate, ask the chief. You have all these hosts of resources. Please ask the question that you need to ask, because we don't want it to be something that it's too late, or we look about it later and wish we could have done something when we have the opportunity to do it now.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Duncan?
I just want to say I appreciate you making the environment safe for our teachers and our students. There are no words to express, how a parent would feel to go home and not be able to come home to their children. A rhetorical question: do you do presentations in the school that are youth-related?
We do a lot of drug education and things like that. We're working on, we had some staff changes at the high school. This high school, especially the high school, we have something called Trojan News, and we're working to do basically our version of a public safety announcement that'll play to every kid in the building during that Trojan News time. And then we educate as many kids as we can anytime they ask.
So I think one of your best things is new drivers and knowing what to do.
Yeah, so we've done that where we started the program because every kid gets scared. Adults get scared when the cops get behind them, right? They're like, what did I do? So we actually started a program last year where we're teaching the kids what to expect, what the officer should be saying, because it's pretty standardized. They should be identifying themselves. They should be telling you why they pulled you over. They're going to ask you for these documents. We help the kids set up where those documents are so they don't get nervous. If you pull over a teenager, they hit the curb and they start crying, and it's like, we want to try to help take some of those fears and uneasiness out of it. And that does help. We did that at Welty, and we've done that at high school, and we'll continue on with that also.
Also, I think that when you do bicycle safety, the helmet safety.
I'm sorry, can you come back to the microphone so it can get recorded? We got all these great things, we want people to hear about them.
So in elementary, they'll do bicycle helmet safety, stranger danger, especially around Halloween. There's multiple things at all levels that our SROs partner with our teachers, our counselors. Our focus is prevention. So yes, they're there if we need them for a response, but they would be really bored if they just sat in their office. So the expectation is there's a partnership around prevention and building relationship with kids. They're present on playgrounds, they're present in cafeterias, and I think training is happening every minute of every day with some student, I would guess.
Right.
Yeah.
So having a kid in school, I just wanted you to put it out there that how invaluable you are to our kids and our schools. You're angels in our schools. So we really appreciate you, and you do more than just security. So I just wanted you to put that out there. Shout out to you.
Councilmember Applegate?
Yeah, I have a question. Now, the chief would be in charge, of course, but if you're the first one on site, you'd be in charge. Would everybody know that?
So we're working on that too to solidify our response, and it won't be me. Especially if it's at the high school, I'm going to be in that stack. I'm there with my guys every day, and that's how it's going to be if there's something like that. It'll be commanders, other chief, and we'll bring our incident command, and it's set up with the layouts of the school, and my job will be relaying as much information as I can, as I'm still trying to stop that threat.
And you would be informed from, say it's another school, constantly on what is going, because it's good to have
And if it is another
communication.
school, me and Sergeant Sanchez will be leaving high school and heading there because we are also that leadership support for our guys. But my officers are definitely trained and very well at they do very well at their jobs, and they are going to go and do whatever they can until we get more help to them.
Are you in communication with all of them, or chief, or whoever's in charge?
Yep.
Talking to all of them?
Yep.
Because that seemed to be the breakdown at Uvalde.
Yep.
Nobody talked to anybody.
Yep.
Right.
And sometimes it's like a war zone. It's on the fly, and you got to make quick
Yep.
decisions. And the stupid building was a one-story building with windows. Did anybody think of the window? My
Right.
And
goodness.
here's the other
Right.
unique thing for us is we're dispatched by El Paso County Sheriff's Office. So everybody hears us. So if I say I need help, I have this, whatever, that's going out through El Paso County Dispatch. They're going to shoot that to CSPD. State Patrol monitors our channels all the time. I have deputies in our area that are going to hear that call because they're on the exact same radio channel as us. And so we're going to get as many officers to
Okay.
that area. And we've trained our other agencies that if they're coming to Fountain, command staff and chief are in charge, and they get that. There's not gonna be this tug of war who's in charge. It's gonna be like, hey, Fountain, I'm here, what do you need? We're gonna do the same thing if it happens, because we touch District 3, so we have Mesa Ridge High School, which is in the city limits of Fountain. I have a working relationship with those officers. If they call, we're coming. I've helped them with things that they just needed a female officer for, and they got a male officer in that building. Absolutely, we're gonna help our brothers and sisters to a little bit of our north, to make sure that we have those safe environments for all the kids in our area.
Okay, that's wonderful, because if they had all communicated with each other, because you had different forces there and they were all different, they didn't communicate with each other.
Yep.
But if they did it here, everybody would be on the same wavelength. The
Yep.
chief talked, everybody'd listen. Someone had eyes on something, everybody would listen.
Yep, absolutely.
That's terrific.
And we train and only get better. That's the best we can do too. Is we have open lines of communication with the department and agencies around us.
That's very encouraging. Thank
Hey, LT, let me make one real quick comment. I want to make sure that everybody understands. We changed something at our police department and our fire department years ago, and that was the dependence of the chief making decisions in these incidents. These decisions have to be made at the lowest levels, because basically once a shooter gets inside of a building, it's too late already, right? With what they can do. So the reason that the Uvalde chief got involved in this is there's only 3 people and he was one of the first ones there because it's so small. We cannot wait for a chief to arrive on scene or a commander or anyone else. Tara and her folks, within a matter of minutes, have to make these decisions, the tactical decisions. So if chief is making decisions and they're waiting for the chief, it's too late. So just understand, this one you hear about the chief a lot, but when these work and a tactical response works effectively, the commander's not making decisions, the chief's not, because they're being made within 2 to 3 minutes. That's how quickly they have to make those. I just wanted to point that out, because that's something we changed years and years ago. Don't wait for the chief to make decisions, it's too late.
Right.
And we practice it. We train it. We have a training coming up for my officers on one of our staff development days, where I'm going to take the officers and we're going to go practice again. We're going to practice our responses, because the more reps we get, the better off we are if that ever unfortunate day comes. So.
Councilmember Hinton?
So you brought something up, and Councilmember Applegate brought it up. So if there was an active shooter at the middle school and you responded from the high school, does all the other school districts get locked down until that situation is under control?
Absolutely.
I just want to make that clear to all parents. You know,
Yeah.
we err on the side of caution. We will lock everything down until that situation is controlled, and you will get your kids back until everything is settled
And I
down.
won't deplete my forces from any of those schools.
Okay.
Because we don't know where 1 is or 2 is, or if this is a distraction.
All right.
And that's the benefit of the school radio, because Montina will be on that channel, and she'll be locking down all the other schools.
So all of our administrators have the radio, and I can speak to all of them at once on emergency. And so they would know immediately that they need to go on, secure the building and go on lockdown. So I think these radios, when we started this 7 years ago, we didn't have any school radios that like administrators carried. Now we have over 400. So throughout every building, there's enough radios in strategic places in the building that, and any teacher knows they can call a lockdown themselves. They don't have to wait on an administrator either. So the same structure has happened with educators, that you don't need to wait on a principal to say, hey, this is serious enough, we got to lock down. You do it yourself if you see a situation outside your window, in the hallway, and that's how we coach the same way. So
And that's
Thank
why we
you.
have a PIO, right? So they send out that email. So I'd rather lock down or secure or go to a hold and not need it than somebody being afraid to make that call
Right.
when we really did need to. Yeah, that's just a practice.
Dr.
right? If we
Romero?
call a hold and it was okay, that was a practice for us.
Thank you.
I'm sure this is trained, but you know, in an emergency, your mind just kind of goes blank. The parents, what do you want the parents' message to be? If they hear the schools are on lockdown, you know immediately people start on social media.
Yep.
What do you need those parents to do? Because we need our streets clear.
Right.
So that
They need to
officers
stay
can
home.
get to.
Stay home, and the district will communicate. That's one of the things that definitely Christy McGee's here, our Director of Communications, and that's what she's communicating. We just sent an email to all parents with our safety protocols and where the district is around safety to make sure everyone knows that information. However, I know as a parent, that your first instinct, right, is to go. And that's one of the other things that we've worked on is how do we secure an area so that we can get, the high school's my biggest fear because that road gets congested really easy. And we got to make sure that we can get emergency vehicles there. And if parents crowd that road, it's a problem. So that's the communication we're having, and it's hard, but know that we're going to communicate. I think we've made a lot of progress in that area. We also didn't have a director of communications 7 years ago, so we're making progress.
Right.
All
But-
those things
But yeah,
help.
if the streets, I've been around your schools at accidentally.
At release time,
At
yeah.
release time. And they are very crowded, and it could very easily, so please, and I know that's a hard thing to ask.
It is hard.
Very hard thing to ask, but it could be the best thing you do so we can get the people there that need to be there.
But I think that's why communication's important, because the more you
Yeah.
trust your system, you trust the information you're given, then I think the easier it is to partner on that.
Yeah. Okay. Any comments from staff? Chief Heber, you're holding it in over there. All right, and Councilmember Duncan?
I have a question about, because there's a train track to come into the high school, so do we have communications with, so if there's an incident, they can move? Okay.
And we've done that before. We've had whatever emergency on a train track, and we've had to stop trains. And we have that communication to stop a train if we need to, and do whatever we need to do. And they work the best they can. It takes a lot of miles, a mile to stop a train, but they've done it. And you know, that is also one of our partnerships.
Mayor Pro Tem Estes?
I just want to make a comment. I'm really happy to know that you're communicating with the parents, because I don't have children, but I know that I came from the medical background, and your first response is to go to it. And we went through the training with active shooter and with emergency responses for incidents, and we have to remind ourselves not to show up. You know, that's not our job at that point. They'll let us know when we're needed and when we need to come. But to remember, and that's a hard one, but it just takes that reminder. So good job on that.
Your mic is still on. Did you have something else? Okay. All right. Unless there's any questions, we're going to move on. I cannot thank you enough, D8, for this partnership. I know it benefits us during the school year, but then it helps us out. You know, we pick up the rest of the salary for the year, and then we have the officers to fill in. So it's been a fantastic. If you have any more money you want to throw our way, you know, come see me.
Thank you.
I always got ideas, right? Thank you so much, officers, for coming in and sharing that today. I know it's hard, but like you said, we learn when we evaluate.
Thank you, Mayor.
So thank you very much. All right. Item 4.2, Board and Commission Committees. We have none to appoint tonight. City Council agenda requests. City Council shall use this time to request any items for future consideration. I'm going to start on my left. Councilmember Rick?
Nothing tonight, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Corey?
Nothing tonight.
Councilmember Hinton?
Nothing tonight.
Councilmember Estes?
Nothing tonight?
Councilmember Applegate?
No, I don't have anything now.
Councilmember Duncan?
I don't have anything.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to item 6, public to be heard. Citizens may address the council on items that are not on the agenda. Council may not be able to provide an immediate answer, but will direct staff to follow up. Out of respect for the council and others in attendance, please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Just want to remind people, we do have the 3 lights the clerk will be putting on. The first one that'll come on is green, When the yellow comes on, you have 30 seconds to wrap up your comments, and when the red light is flashing, we do ask you to wrap them up. So I do have 2 cards tonight. The first one is from Ms. Charlize Rafferty. So if you'd like to come up, please. And it just says follow-up.
Hello again. Hi.
Hello.
Do I have to state my name or?
Yes, please, we need to state for the record.
Charlize Rafferty. I'm actually here to follow up about my presentation. I'm just gonna give her these. I have something for you guys. Oh, thank you so much for having me come. That helps. Thank you so much for having me come back. I had a few questions and follow-up things. In general. Oh, okay, I'm just gonna talk about the sheet. I had this whole thing planned, completely forgot it, very on brand. So, so one of the things that we spoke about previously at my last presentation was about grants. You mentioned the Daniel Fund. And actually a few days ago, my mom and I looked up some of the grants that could provide free recreational funding for the city. And I just wondered if you had registered for any of those and anything like that.
All right, any questions you have, Scott can follow up with you, or but we'll follow up later with you with the appropriate staff person, so.
Yeah, and about that, then I believe the last one is due on the 28th, so if you need any help with that or with that in general, I'd be more than happy to provide that, of course. Did I have anything else? Is that everything? Okay, that was all. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much for your time. Thank you. All right, the next card I have is from Liz Rosenbaum, and it says PFAS Health Study and the 3rd Annual Conference in North Carolina in June. North Carolina in June.
All right. Hi.
Hot and humid, huh?
Hey, I'm Liz Rosenbaum, your community water activist, and I know it's been a long time since June when I went to that, but I had some things happen. So, as you know, the EPA drastically reduced the standards advisories for PFAS, which is the water repellent, and PFOA, which is Teflon. I kind of got a hint to it about, I don't know, the afternoon before it was announced. And so I immediately reached out to, I'm pretty sure I sent Dan an email right away, hey, EPA is going to do something all of a sudden. Because I remember how panicked we all were the last time they did that 6 years ago. So it seems like they're still doing the same thing. Shock and awe, let's go to the next PFAS conference. So this one was so well done that they're going to have a 4th and 5th conference. There was that gap because of COVID. So we're looking at, we being the other coalition leaders across, the nation, looking at Colorado and Michigan hosting 4 and 5. So I don't know if we're going to host the 4th one or the 5th one. And I would really like to be in touch with Fountain City Council because it brings in a lot of revenue, right? There were 300 people at this conference. So it brought money for a catering business, and they gave us breakfast, lunch, dinner. They provided so much. And then on our own, we purchased our own snacks or extra breakfast, if it wasn't quite enough for us, or coffee, whatever. So we have that potential revenue coming in because our local municipalities have been amazing with groundbreaking science for filtering this water. So bravo, everybody was talking about how amazing El Paso County is. And we are the last of the 8 places to get the health study done. So we do need some extra help with that because COVID kind of pushed everything off. It took us 2.5 years to be selected as one of the 8. So those of you who are on city council, please go in, talk to Deanna. She's in charge of the office here. And I always do a plug because our CAP program, it's the Citizen Advisory Panel. I know I was a huge advocate all the time, even at CDC meetings and with Dr. Adgate. I want someone local in charge of this health study. And Deanna is a graduate of Fountain Fort Carson High School. She has degrees in science, public health. She's amazing. She has skin in this game. And then it took a year to get our site location, just right down the road here, that dentist office. It took a year to secure local because we kept pushing, we have to have this in town and not off over by the movie theater. That was a second location. I was like, no, we got to keep all this local. So please help continue to promote that. We need 1,000 adults and 300 children. And last report is we're at about 300 adults and about 50 children. So the ages of the children is age 4 to 18. And the reason it's age 4 is because of the wonderful job that we've had our water filtered. So if you're younger than that, the only pass through would be from the pregnant person, the mother, to the baby. However, the levels will be significantly lower. So a more fair, with a scientific study, you have to have some guidelines, right? So if you have a friend who has moved into Colorado Springs, but lived here during 2005 to 2015, they can still participate in the study. So thank you. Any questions?
No, thank you very much. And
Okay.
I know Dan's got your contact info, and Scott does too. And you're talking about the scope study that we see the
Yes.
sign for on the building. So I just want to clarify that for the tape.
Right,
So
for the
you were pointing over
co-scope.
there, and I know what you mean, but.
The co-scope study.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
It's okay.
Okay. All right, thank you. All righty. Okay, I don't have any more cards, so we're going to move on to the next item from the consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be approved with one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which case the item may be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately at the discretion of council. So council, what would you like to do? Councilmember Estes?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Councilmember Applegate?
Oh,
I'm
Okay.
Councilmember Corey, thank you.
second that motion.
Thank you, Councilmember Corey. Okay, all right. Okay. All right, they even separated the names for me and I still do it, so. All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor.
Mayor, can you give me just a moment, please?
Yes. All righty, wait for the voting machine here. All right, and now please vote.
Seven yes, motion carried.
Thank you. That takes us on to item 8, old business, and there is none tonight. So we're on to item 9, 9A. We can skip because we didn't remove anything from the consent agenda. On to item B, update to City Council and the public on the 2022-24 City Council Strategic Plan, and Mr. Trainer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. It's my pleasure to be here, and I'm going to go through the strategic plan update today. I'm primarily going to focus on the 2022 pieces of that. We'll touch on 23 and 24 as well, but as you can imagine, the work on 2024 and 2023 items is still more so in the future than anything. But Paul, if you could, do you want me to just tell you when to advance it? Perfect. That's great right there. Right there, just going to briefly touch on this. This comes from our vision statement and a statement of enduring interest that's in that. Those are some of the sort of foundational comments. And I'm making these statements for the public that may be watching this as well. But that's sort of the foundational statement that is at the basis of our strategic plan and what we're looking at moving forward. Okay, Paul, next. These are through a public process of the strategic priorities that were identified. We had 4 priorities. They aren't in any specific order. You may hear me refer to them, 1 through 4 tonight, just because of the order that they're in on the presentation. But these are the specific ones. I'll hit on each of these, and for each of these, objectives were created by different departments, and there are accountabilities associated with each item, with each objective, to a various department that's working on them. Paul, next. This is a real quick review of just a little bit about the background of the strategic plan for those who may not be aware. I mentioned the 4 strategic priorities. We have a total of 30 strategic objectives, which when you really get looking at it, that's a lot of objectives to accomplish in 3 years, because these aren't little things, they're fairly significant things. You'll see that to date, we have 2 accomplished that are completed, and we're working forward on a number of others that we'll be touching on. And then we also have copies available here at City Hall, on the city website. We have copies in the back of the room as well. We always leave in this room for those who may want to pick that up. Next, please. All right, so now I'm going to jump into these forms here, which some of you that have been in the military, this may look familiar to you. But the reason we use them is because they're a really quick and easy grab that provide a lot of information about each of these objectives. So the first 2 slides that we're going to hit on are associated with the same strategic priority. And you'll see that the priority is to facilitate responsible development. And I won't read that whole thing, but these are all focused on the development side of the priorities, of the objectives. And so you'll see specifically objectives on the top right, D1 through D7, D for development, 1 through 7. You can see what each of those are. Specifically, the ones for 2022 that we're focused on are D1, D2, and D6. Those are the 3 development-related objectives. And so I'm just going to briefly touch on those. Completing the 369 development study. 3, 6, and 9 refer to the years. And so we're doing it, if the council recalls, we're doing a sort of a growth projection on what would our community look like and our organization look like in 3 years, 6 years, and 9 years. Those seem like odd numbers, but those are the numbers that sort of synchronize with our strategic plan years. So we're looking at 3, 6, and 9. Those templates are currently being developed, and our staff will then take those and start projecting forward. What does it look like for my department? What does it look like for police and fire and parks, et cetera, if our community grows as projected, which, as we know, it's tough to project out 2 years, let alone 3, 6, and 9 years, but it at least gives us some sort of target that'll give us an idea of what are the impacts of growth whenever it occurs. Now, obviously, we're putting these timelines on it, but who knows? Who knows if it'll be 3, 6, and 9, or if it'll be 5, 10, and 15. What we will know is we'll have at least a better sense of what the growth will impact, how that growth will impact our organization. D2, you can see the report to the City Council on discussions to obtain access to treated water. There's a lot of work, as the council's aware, going on with that right now. Dan has talked a lot with council members and with the community and with our partners as well about what steps are being taken, what efforts we need to take. We're working with Colorado Springs on some options right now. In fact, Dan and I will both be meeting with Colorado Springs tomorrow and talking about some more things. So that's just a constant work in the process. That's a huge haul, but that's an important priority for us. And then D6 is the last development-related one for 2022. Oh, excuse me, the last development one on this slide. Develop and present a new volunteer management program. You'll see at the next council meeting, it'll be either the next one or the following one, Lucia will be bringing in a volunteer management program to give us an idea of what she's developed to create some sort of volunteer program for those individuals or organizations that want to do volunteer projects around the community. We have a number of community volunteers and agencies and churches and you name it, Boy Scout groups, whatever, that always are looking for really good volunteer projects. And on the flip side, we have a lot of needs. And so we're trying to create this program to marry them up. You'll hear more about that at our next, like I said, one of the next 2 council meetings. You can see the various issues and comments around each of these. These will all go anywhere between now and 2024. The 3 that I've indicated, D1, D2, and D6, are the focal points currently for 2022. Any questions before I move to the next slide? Thank you. Next, Paul. Okay, this is the second slide of development-related objectives. D10 and D11 specifically are the ones that are identified for 2022. D10 is to complete a project to build a new concession stand with restroom at Aga Park. D11, complete a project to build a new shop building for the City Parks Department. That's a really critical thing. Those 2 things work together from a financial standpoint. So our first focus right now, and we've got we've got a cost on it, and I think we're preparing in October? To begin construction on our Parks Department. The Aga concession stand really tied in with how much we think we can save from the Parks shop project. So stay tuned. We'll see what that ultimately will end up costing us. The way we're doing it, we're piecemealing out a couple different pieces of it to keep it as cheap as possible. And then we're trying to use whatever potential savings there are so that we can complete a concession stand at Aga Park. For those of you that have been over there, you've seen that shed. The high schoolers painted, I don't know, how many years has that been? 6 or 7 maybe? Longer than that? And you know, that just really has a lot of wear and tear, and it's really not a great facility. So we're going to combine a new concession stand and restroom facility, but it's going to really depend on what we save out of this first project. Any question on these?
I actually was over at the park the other day, and I was kind of walking around looking at that, and I don't think we opened it this year at all, did we? And there's no plan to open it next year? The purple building? The purple building?
The concession building?
The purple one at Aga Park?
Yeah, that's the concession building. I don't believe that we anticipate opening it next year, so during the transition into the new Aga Park restroom concession building, we wouldn't have it open.
So I was just wondering, can we remove it?
Oh, it'll be removed as
I
part of
mean,
this.
like, if we're not going to use it, can we remove it and then it?
We certainly can. When we have staff to do that. Right now, we're, of course, so short-staffed.
Right, no, I
but
know.
yes.
I mean, that's like one of those winter projects.
And it's not a pretty building, is that what you're saying?
Its day has come and gone.
It has. It was great, and we appreciated it when we had it and it was functioning.
But if it's not using it, you
That's
know.
right.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay, next, Paul. Thank you. Okay, so this is the strategic priorities you can see around diversifying city financial resources. And so you can see that we have a couple items on here that have been completed, F3 and 4, completing an assessment of city financial instruments. If you recall, John Lewis, our finance director, came and provided some information to the city council on that. And so that has been completed, as has the second one there, present options regarding potentially joining the Pikes Peak Rural Transit Authority. That conversation came up around the council's discussions around whether we look at joining PPRTA and taking that to the voters, or moving forward with the public safety ballot measure. And as we know, the council decided to move forward with the public safety ballot measure. So I suspect, and I think this is actually a good opportunity to make this point, these strategic plans are set at a specific time, but they're also organic in the sense that they change over time. And so what we may determine next year is that we need to look again at F4, or maybe not even next year, maybe 2024, who knows. But those things can come back. We can adjust as we get through some of these objectives, and as we move forward in time, we can, of course, adjust the objectives that we have here as well and that we pursue, and that we put our city resources towards. The other two that are focal points for 2022 are F2 and F5. So as you can see up there, F2 is to expand the city intergovernmental support agreement program. We spent a lot of time talking about our IGZA program. As we know, John Trilch has spent a lot of time and effort with Fort Carson on these intergovernmental support agreements. I think you're going to be seeing in the near future another IGZA coming forward on potential animal control. And so that'll be probably coming to the council here in the near future, because that's another one that he's exploring. He's constantly looking at different options and working with not just Fort Carson, it's actually expanded. We've been talking to the Air Force as well on their facilities for different kind of opportunities for IGZA programs and ways that we can support our military partners. So you'll see more of that as well. We'll be moving forward with that. F5 is develop and present a city incentive policy to recruit commercial development. That's one that's coming up from a time standpoint. Let me look at my date here. September. So next month, we're going to see a presentation. In fact, I think it may be complete, Kimberly, or almost complete. She's to the point where she's about ready to bring it to you. So you're going to be seeing some action on that around incentive policies and a discussion. You know, what does the council want to do? You'll hear some recommendations, of course, and we're kind of excited for that. Any questions on these? Okay. Paul? This last one, this isn't the last slide, but this is the last strategic priority, is the public safety service priority. We know we're spending a lot of time right now on this discussions. In fact, we'll have the next item tonight will be discussion on whether to move forward with the public safety ballot measure. So we know that's been a big focal point. But we also have a couple items on here, actually 3 specific to 2022, R1, R3, and R4. R1 is to publish updates to ethics and leadership and policing policies. That's being done right now. We have updates coming, and we also have training that's ongoing. PS3, present results of a comprehensive study of public safety facilities. And then PS4 is complete a nationally certified accreditation of fire department leadership. I will say on PS4, we actually have There's a whole process. There's a number of steps that happen in our leadership training. Some of our officer corps have completed some of those leadership trainings. Others are in the process. I think we've recognized some of them here in front of the council. It's been pretty exciting to see some of that. But again, you will see us moving forward by the end of 2022 on PS4. And then PS3, I gotta make sure I'm on the right page. Which I am not, okay. PS4, we're gonna have 70% of our fire officers completed their fire science, that's today. And then as far as, PS3, the comprehensive study, that's a 23, so I had the wrong date on that one, but I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. And then the other one is present plans for a first responder mental health and resiliency program. You know the effort that Chief Heber's been putting on mental health. We've got a beacon unit, another beacon unit that the council's recently approved and we're moving forward with. And so we think that's really exciting. And then there's internally, they're looking at various programs. In fact, we discussed one recently in one of our budget meetings, an officer mental health program that will help our officers, and really not just our police officer, our police and fire, when there are, traumatic issues come up. Additionally, they're looking at a program that will help them from a workman's comp standpoint. So, part of mental health is physical health as well. So they're looking at various options on that. Okay, Paul, next one. Then we have Parks and Recreation. We have R1, present outcomes of discussions for utilization of Ventana open space. You're going to see in the next couple months, they're going to be coming to the city council. They're exploring some different recreation options right now. One of the options they're looking at is a disc course, but they'll be coming to the city council to present some of those options as well. Complete the Adams Open Space Trail Bridge project. That trail project, that bridge project down in the Adams Open Space, that's been needed for years. That's about a 90% completion on the design work. The challenge is funding. We think we have most of the funding, but there's always, as we've talked continually, the costs keep escalating on construction. So we're going to have to see where we end up with that when we ultimately do bids. And then the last one for 2022 is R4, offer an intergovernmental support agreement for park services and joint recreation opportunities with Fort Carson. I just mentioned a couple slides ago the IGZA efforts that are ongoing. This is one that we specifically called out underneath the Parks and Recreation priorities. And this is one that some of our Parks and Recreation staff, as well as John, have been having multiple conversations with their Fort Carson colleagues to figure out how do we go about doing that. It could be as simple as purchasing equipment together, but it also could include things like combining some of our recreation programs and allowing, teams from On Post to play teams from Fountain. And there's just a number of different opportunities that we think could really come to fruition. You're going to see a report on that, hopefully by the end of the year as well. Hopefully we're going to have some traction on that and be close to a point where we can start pulling some triggers, so to speak. Any questions on that? Recreation is one of those that are really important to us. This has been a really rough year. I think I mentioned this before to the city council in the budget session. Rough as far as keeping staffing going, but also the fact that we've had this growing program and we literally have one person out in the field that leads this underneath Sylvia. And so we'll be coming back to the council fairly quickly to get some more help for him so that they can have, they can be able to broaden and expand our recreation offerings. So, all right, next slide, Paul. This is just the last one. If the council has any general questions or comments or changes, if there's anything we want to see changed.
I'm not seeing any mics lit. Okay, Councilmember Estes?
I have one question from somebody watching the meeting. Any updates on Heritage Park?
I will defer to Sylvia.
As far as updates to the park itself, to finish it, we do actually have the irrigation installed already. It needs the native grass put back in. We removed that climbing wall a couple years ago. The manufacturer for the climbing wall that it was warrantied under has gone out of business. So we're still working on trying to secure it. As a matter of fact, I just got word today that our order for Metcalf playground equipment that was scheduled to go in September isn't there now, looking at April for same reasons of not having enough staff. So it's been really difficult. So I will give you a more detailed update on that.
Just a quick question on the play equipment for Metcalf. Was that funded through a grant?
No, it was through our budget.
Okay, and how about the one up at Mesa?
Fountain Mesa? No
Have
grant
we ever
funding
used
for
a
that
grants
either.
for any of that?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
We use grants for like Aga Park, and, anytime we can get a grant, we use them. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Can't believe you got to be speechless, Scott. Yeah. Before we go into resolution 9C, I'm going to kind of touch real quick on the end of the agenda because it's going to be a little bit odd, seem a little awkward tonight. After we finish item C, we'll go on to item 10, correspondence and different things. Then we'll go to the announcement of an executive session. We have to announce that and vote on it in open session. After that is done, we will adjourn and we will immediately gavel back in to do GID. So if there's anyone in the audience, as soon as we gavel out of the first meeting, you're welcome to stay for the second meeting for the GID, but we do ask if you're going to leave, that you leave quietly because we'd like to gavel out of it really quick and just get started quickly. And then after GID 1, we'll take a 10-minute break for Sylvia to get set for the executive session, and that will be closed. So it does just seem like a little bit awkward way to do it, but it's just the way it flows and has to be done. So we're going to go on to item C, resolution number 22-045, a resolution submitting to the registered qualified electors of the City of Fountain, Colorado, at the general coordination election to be held on Tuesday, November 8th, 2022, the question of the imposition of a property tax increase to fund public safety and authorizing the exemption of revenues collected from the property tax increase and earnings therein from revenue and spending limits of Article 10, Section 20 of the Colorado Constitution, setting the title and content of the ballot for the election. Chief Heber and Troy Johnson.
Okay, Chief Heber's up here, my technical advisor to keep me out of legal trouble, be sitting to my left, your right. Madam Mayor, thank you, City Council, citizens, everyone online and showed up today. Some of our citizens are here that have been very instrumental in carrying this torch and will continue to carry this torch if approved are here today. I want to thank you for your participation and support. As a reminder, we all started this process about 5 months ago. When we looked at the city strategic plan that the city manager just briefed to us, one of our things we're looking at ways to move in the future and address some of the issues across our city, and there are many. Ultimately, the history looked at, I think for the first time ever, city manager really took the initiative and we were able to contract and look at some surveys that were professionally conducted. And we found out a lot of great information on the two that we put into it, and they were very valuable to us. And between those two surveys, we had over 1,200 residents participate in those surveys. And both of those surveys, public safety and streets, got generally very good support throughout our community. What does that mean? It means that from that point forward, we continue to educate. We had held several meetings, public meetings. A couple of them were attended well. A couple of them were, the attendance was a little low, which is not rare for Fountain. But our job and City Council's job at your direction, we set up a website to help facilitate. We had some coffees, we had some lunches, we did a thing at Restoration Church. Liz came to our thing today. I think we just had, it was good. We had good conversation. That's really what it was about. Citizens talking to elected officials and leaders and talking about the future and telling us why we're here tonight. So we're here tonight, and this is where I'll be brief. I want to hit on a couple of the points to ask in a proposition that if approved tonight would go to the county and we'd vote on it November 8th. To put a public safety ballot initiative on that would raise exactly $1.7 million exclusively for the use of public safety. It's split exactly down the middle, 50% for fire, 50% for the police department. 3/4 of that money would go to support people, and that's what we need. We need that if we're going to ever have the staff to get a 4th fire station in our community, reduce response times for 911, especially from the fire side, maintain our current response levels from the police department, take care of our people, secure our children, etc. The other small part of that money will be used for recruiting, retraining, retention of those said firefighters and police officers. In the state of Colorado and throughout the area, there's never been a crisis in recruiting and retention of our first responders like there is today. We could talk about that all night. Those are factuals. That's a struggle across the Front Range in the Denver metro area and certainly here. We understand that same struggle goes across our city. So we're looking at ways to make sure we can hire the best and retain the best, because ultimately those young men and women touch the citizens, and that's how we're judged by quality of our service, which we want to continue to be high. 6.1 mills, we're asking for 6.1. If you remember about a month ago, you approved up to 6.65, right? Our commitment has always been to the citizens that we respect the point that all of us are facing inflation, right? Cost of housing, cost of other taxes have increased. 6.1 mills is what we're asking for tonight in this resolution, because it is exactly $1.7 million that we asked for. So the good news, it actually came down. That equates for citizens somewhere between $13 a month if you live in a house to $15 a month if you live in a big house. Okay, 13 to 15 is exactly what 6 mills is going to be for the Public Safety Ballot Initiative, which will net this community, and voting has consequence, 12 first responders, that they do need our support and our help. It will be used for these tasks that we have carefully constructed over 4 pages of talking bullets and multiple studies. It will be used for these tasks, and I want to read those into the record because I think it's important for transparency here and for the future. 6 additional firefighters, EMTs, 6 additional police officers to staff an additional fire station and operate an additional ambulance. Improve community response times, sustain current staffing levels, and increase traffic enforcement throughout our city. Expand our school safety programs. We just received a phenomenal brief from our school district and our SRO lieutenant and the commander. And at some level, to your point, Councilman Hinton, citizens will get a vote, and that level will support safety we all feel today, sitting here today within our schools. Right? That will become under pressure of growing staffing challenges in the future. We'll get a vote to recognize that. Expand investigations to sex trafficking crimes and prevent child sex crimes, and prosecute those through the internet and the other systems where we have to go to find those individuals that prey on community members, especially some of our young ones. And finally, it will be used to enhance all existing first responder safety, overall officer safety and firefighter safety, to improve recruitment, retention, and training, and support mental health and wellness of our first responders, which in turn supports it throughout our community. We've always been committed to mentally balanced firefighters and police officers responding to our community. And we made a lot of great steps with our 2 beacon teams to make sure our community has access to that mental health. That is the request on the table today before you. This will be my last time in uniform as your public safety director to really be involved in this process and educate while I'm on duty. It is up to your decision tonight. It will ultimately, if you decide tonight, will be up to our citizens to vote on November 8th, to vote for our future. I would just encourage all of us to know that we're standing in a position today where we get a vote. We won't actually see these first responders until 2024 because of the nature of how the mill levy is collected, but they're going to need your help. Everything I just told you is what the money is going to go to, and we'll have a vote to be proactive today in what kind of a future in the 3, 6, and 9-year models we're going to look at as far as public safety, the safety for our schools, our businesses, your 911 response time, especially if you live on the east side over where I live, right? It's going to be stretched. We all have loved ones in the community, and we're just going to encourage everyone to get educated and vote. So that, pending any questions, concludes my brief. Well under the 20-minute threshold. There's a couple of, I think Scott maybe wanted to say something or highlight something. I'm not sure, boss. Good. And I'll just take any questions.
Councilmember Applegate, you have a question?
You have a question for anybody over here. When we make a motion, do we have to add that we're changing to 6.1 from 6.65?
No, and I think Chief asked me that similar question before, and the direction to the council, or from the council, was to really just put this resolution before you. So the way that the resolution is written is 6.1. And so I think that's consistent with the direction, especially given kind of the presentation that we saw from last council meeting regarding the property rates. So if you'd like to change it from 6.1 to something else, you need to make that motion. And as kind of I'm on that, I think it's to be clear, the 1.7 million is an estimate based upon that 6.1 mils, right? Based upon the financial information that we have, and that will be published along with this in the, if it were to get passed, that would come from our finance department, would be kind of breaking down those numbers to understand how you get there. But the actual tax is that 6.1, which is an estimated 1.7 million a year. And so that's how you get to those numbers.
Could you explain for the record, people think I passed it in November, right? In January, I should see an officer on the street. Can you just explain a little bit further?
Sure.
Why you said that 2024 is going to be before we really start seeing,
There was some debate even amongst us on whether to do a sales tax or a mill levy. The sales tax can be hurt by inflation or an economy downturn and won't be consistent. A sales tax, though, once we started collecting the money, we could start spending it. A mill levy, if passed in November, we won't actually collect the money for another year. So we'll have time as an organization to get the equipment, get ready for that, and then begin the onboarding process in 2024 based on the nature of a mill levy that is very consistent. But we're going to have to wait a year to do that. But will give us time to get the equipment and resources. So when we do hire them, we have the equipment, vehicles. We're going to expand and look at the 4 different locations. I've talked to the fire chief several times that we're looking at the east side that we hope to be able to have positive news and open up at least an initial phase 1 of a fire station. Our mill levy in the city of Fountain, which is currently at 10.239, the last time it was raised was 1990. So we have done our best as a city for almost the last 32 years to try and make the best we can of what the mill levy has generated. And I would just ask our citizens to take a look at that. Those costs of services, as we all know, have increased from that point, but we haven't raised it since 1990.
Councilmember Applegate?
Yeah, you said that this would be like $13 a month for an average home?
Yes. $350,000 would be like $13.42 a month. By the time it gets, in loose mass up to around the 500, 550, it's about $15 a month.
Okay, but people should know that whatever their house is valued at has nothing to do with their appraised value.
Correct.
Appraised value is always a little lower, so
Yes.
it probably isn't that much.
Yes. And really, it's that understanding of the city managers did a lot of good work in the finance department after the brief received from the county assessor of really understanding the new laws and exactly to your point of what was said. And really, the good news is, to be respectful, we reduced it down to the 6.1.
Councilmember Duncan?
You can let Scott go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, Scott?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to follow up on that and mention that we've developed a tool for our citizens. It's on our website right now. So they could look at that tool, and it's a spreadsheet, and it provides one cell that they can plug in the value of their home. And based on the value of their home, Chris just mentioned for a $350,000 home, maybe they want to put $250,000, maybe they want to put $450,000, whatever that number is, they can plug in and it automatically calculates what that impact would be for their home. So that's on our website right now that they can take a look at.
I just would like to say to the citizens that your small investment to this will help reduce crime in our cities. And it will also help improve our situation with law enforcement and to do something as our number of law enforcement needs to increase. Please consider that when you go to the ballot and vote. It's a very small investment. Crime in our city is increasing, and we need our law enforcement.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hinton?
Yeah, Chief, at the last town hall meeting that we had at the Restoration Church, you briefed that at any given time, we probably have 3 officers or 3 patrol cars patrolling the city of Fountain. Now, when this ballot measure is passed, not when, but when it's passed, that will increase the number of police officers that will be patrolling the city of Fountain in 2024.
It will. In 2024, it's going to do 2 things. It's going to greatly help the fire department and their staffing model. They don't have the flexibility that the police department does, right? They have their stations, they're on a 48-hour shift, right? And they got what they got when they show up. So it will greatly increase immediately. And what we're doing concurrently right now to self-fix the situation with our staffing will have a tremendous impact and help us build for capacity for the future. On the police side of it, we play the game of rob Peter to pay Paul every single day. There's very little predictability. We shuffle every day and we move chips on the board. Of the 61 cops, 11 are dedicated to the school resource officer. That gives us a net of 50. At any one time in the police and fire and across our city, 10% of those people are sick, injured, leave, maybe on the maternity leave, right? There's something that drives that reduction of force. So the bare minimum that you have protecting the city is 3 police officers. At any one priority call that we're going to get there, our response time averages 5 minutes and 16 seconds, but it wipes out every available resource that we have within the city. That will put more cops into the formation to help that and help sustain the future.
Thank you, Chief. And I have just one follow-on question just for fire department. Now, my understanding is that the fire department is running at, as far as truck, you're running at the minimum staff possible currently right now. Is that correct, Chief?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. And I just want to make sure that our citizens understand this, that was briefed tonight. We are, as Chief said, we are robbing Peter to pay Paul, and we are at minimum staff for our fire, and even, I would say, dare to say, our police officers. We need your support as this comes forward. We need for you to vote your conscience, but as you vote your conscience, look at the numbers and what we have as our city continues to grow in that 3, 6, 9 phase. We cannot wait when it's too big to implement these strategies. We need to be proactive and implement it now, so when it does happen, we're ready to be able to respond and react.
It's very well said.
Councilmember Duncan?
So just for clarification, just as Councilman Hinton said, this will increase for the numbers that we need for the new fire station, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll have enough, we'll have the employees to man that fire station.
That's correct.
Okay.
We might do it in a tiered opening and tiered response. We might split some of the personnel between Fire Station 3 and presumably when we get there, a Fire Station 4. But it will greatly help our capability to cover our entire city. And for all the citizens, the minute we have a fire station over on the east side of the tracks, everyone's insurance is going to drop dramatically if you live over there. ISO ratings should improve across our city. That's been a big selling point, that we've really kind of touted and tried to help our community understand. It's based on our training, it's based on our resources, and if you live within 5 miles of a fire station, you're going to pay your reduced insurance. Tom has a story from where he lives. We talked to some of our, I think Liz, did you tell that story today? Yeah. But there was someone at our group today that had that exact story. As soon as they lived next to a fire station, right within the 5 mile radius, their insurance level dropped. So if we do those two things, what I would tell you for your small investment, it could actually put money back in your pocket.
Oh, I thought you were raising your hand there for a second. Okay, all right. One of the things that came through, a couple of things, we can't fund it on grants because it's not a permanent source of funding. You need a permanent source of funding to really get the program going the way it needs to be for the city. And the second one was, there were some comments from people said, if it was only fire department, I would fund it. If we have a shooter, who's going to go in first?
Yeah.
Right? It's going to be the fire department. The police department is going to go in first, and the fire department cannot go in to help those people until you clear the building.
I would encourage people to do what we do is your public safety is a team, right? The dispatchers are eyes and ears. They're controlling it. They're sending us to radio calls. They're relaying information from citizens. You have the police officers that play a critical role. You have your emergency response, your EMTs, your firefighters that play a critical role. And they can't do it by themselves. And if there's any chinks in the armor, then the system implodes. And if that happens, you're going to have firefighters at risk. You're going to have police officers at risk, right? Or you're going to have citizens at risk. And we're trying to be proactive. Todd and I grew up here, right, doing the law enforcement. Todd, when I was in the Army. And we know some of the communities that surround here that stood at this very point, had a decision, and they watched their community not be a place that they would want to say is safe today, right? And I won't name them. We've talked about them before, right? Commander Lewis comes from Detroit. Commander Lewis was here to tell you today. He's a 25-year guy. He knows exactly the point where they lost the city, and they never got it back. We don't want to lose our city.
Councilmember Hinton.
I just want to make sure that this is clear to our citizens. It is not all gloom and doom. Our police department and fire department do a great job, right? The crime is high in all areas, not just here in Fountain. And so they are doing the very best that they can to protect you, your loved ones, and we just want to make sure that service continues at the highest level.
Before I open it up to the public, see if they've got any questions or comments. I want to make sure we state on records, this is for people. This is not money going to build the fire department. We have another funding source for the actual building of the fire department.
That's correct.
This will not go to fund that. Scott?
Yeah, that's actually what I wanted to address when the GID question came up. The question about the fire department came up, the building itself. We're going to talk about it a little bit later tonight, and Troy will provide a little bit more information about the background GID 1. But for those who may not be aware, GID 1 is a major funding stream for a potential public safety building. It can't fund bodies, but it can fund a building. And so we've been squirreling away money from that GID. It's not a lot of money at a time, but we believe in the next few years we'll have the monies we need to build that station completely independent of this public safety tax. So I wanted to mention that as well. Just real briefly also, I mentioned a minute ago that tool that's online. John Trilchier has the location of that. I just wanted him to briefly share where that is on the website for those who may be looking for it.
Yes, thank you, Scott. So we've created a public safety information link on the website. It's right at the very top. If you go on a desktop and you load the city's webpage, it'll be right at the very top on the left. When you go on your mobile phone, it'll be right at the very top, very first thing you see. So you click that link and it'll take you into the page. Then it has a wide variety of information about the ballot initiative, the results of the survey, all the feedback. There's statistics for police, fire, and EMS on the number of calls, the manning. The ballot language will be in there, and there's a tab for a property tax calculator. You can go in there, click that Excel sheet, plug in your home value, and it'll tell you how this mill change would impact your property taxes. So, and the city will continue to put information into that page, as this goes along and we respond to citizen questions. But I just wanted to highlight where that is on the city's website.
Okay.
So if you see an officer on the street, they're busy doing their job, they're not going to be able to answer your questions. They're just going to say, go to the website.
That's right.
And they're not being rude. It's just they got a job to do.
It's just their lane.
It's just that, yeah. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and open it up the floor for questions. If people can come in and comment, they can support on it. We do ask that you keep it to 3 minutes. We're going to ask the city clerk to please use the 3-minute timer on the thing. Once again, when it blinks yellow, you got 30 seconds to wrap it up. And we got a couple police officers here. If it gets red and blinks too long, well, you know.
So Rick Clements.
Good evening.
And I've really been amazed that this hasn't already been a mill levy for our public safety. You go anyplace else, it's all tied into your property taxes. This is the only place I've seen where that the fire department and the police department is controlled by city taxes, by sales tax. It's not and that fluctuates because you don't know what it's going to be one week to the other. If we have a mill levy, they know what they have. You go now, and I mean, I've been by there where the police, the fire station over on 3 has been closed because they didn't have anybody there. This is what we need. We need this passed. It's got to go to support our safety. Our fire department needs it. They're down to minimum, and yet look at the work they do. It's fantastic. It's really just pride for these guys, just how much work they do, and then how they do it with nothing. And we can't find a better chief for our police department or for our fire department. So I'm just saying is that we need to support these guys. This needs to come from the citizens, and we need to pass this badly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clements. Anyone else in the audience like to speak? Please come up and state your name.
All right, I'm Liz Rosenbaum, and I live in rural Fountain, and I can't vote for this, but I can definitely support it by talking about it. And I do support this mill levy because it affects even the outliers. So some things that I would also like to point out, since I am rural, as you know, City of Colorado Springs gave a huge tax break to Amazon that really hurts School District 3. So when, like Council Member Hinton said, when this passes, it is up to the City Council to make sure you don't give tax breaks to large corporations or developers, because it hurts the rest of us, right? It hurts our school districts and our, homeowners as well, right? So I know that I'm asking a lot by, asking people, hey, this is going to come out of your property taxes when it's not going to come out of mine, but I'm going to get a benefit from it. Security partners with Hanover, and they literally saved my life. I would have died in June if they would have come all the way out. And their response time was 20 minutes, which is phenomenal because that's a normal drive time. So that type of partnership is needed between, the county, your city, the volunteer fire department with Hanover. So please make sure that this is a really robust plan and that you don't undermine it accidentally. So make this at the forefront of your thoughts as you're looking at trying to bring in additional business, which is what we need in Fountain, right? We need more than how many more pizza places do we need, honestly? Please stop. Or car washes.
That's private property rights. They can build what they want.
I understand, but we also have some pretty big developments that want to come in and then be annexed in and annexed out. If you annex them out, they've waited 20 years to finally decide they want to build something. They can wait another 5 minutes. Don't give them an inch. They've had time. Leave them in the city of Fountain because you need the revenue. Our support staff here, public safety, needs that revenue. People are going to build their houses, and if they have to wait just a little bit longer to build a house there, they're going to wait. It's fine. Let it happen. Don't cut the funding to this amazing program and to your really cool small town. Thanks. Liz Rosenbaum.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else from the audience like to say anything? Do we have anybody online?
No one online, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Going. Okay, is there anybody from staff that wanted to say anything? Okay, if not, I will bring it back up to the dais. And I just want to double check, there's not any more questions. Did you have a question or comment? Okay. Did you have a question?
I was ready to make a motion.
Okay, I know I got all sorts of lights on here, so I want to make sure that one of them wasn't for questions. So, Councilmember Rick?
Move to approve Resolution 22-045.
Okay, do we have a second?
I unanimously second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on Resolution 22-045. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, please vote.
Seven yes, motion carried.
I would like to thank council. A lot of times you start a discussion on something, especially around a mill levy, and while you have the discussion, and then you start getting pressure from people in different discussions. And I would like to thank all 7 of us. I'm very proud of us for getting this on the ballot. The work begins. I'd like to introduce Jennifer Hersberg. Jennifer Hersberg is our campaign manager. We're getting all the bolts and pieces put together now. And so she will be we have different team leaders for different things, and we're on a roll. So, all righty. Jennifer, we're not abandoning you. You're not alone. All right. All right, thank you, and congratulations, everyone, and thank you for your hard work to everyone on the staff. I know this has been a passion for you guys, too. We're on to item 10, correspondence, comments, and ex officio reports. Reminding staff it is almost 8 o'clock, and we're not done yet. So, Scott, got anything to say?
I had a whole bunch of things, but I'm just kidding. I don't really, nothing.
Todd? Troy?
Just quickly, I attended the statewide opioid conference last week. Went very well, and actually was one of the only representatives from our region in El Paso and Teller County that sits on the council. they had a pretty good excuse. I think that was at the same time as Deputy Perry's memorial service, and so many of those representatives were there honoring him. But I did represent us at that conference, and things went well, and great information. Some of the best experts in the country on substance abuse disorders, and really getting the right amounts of money to the right people to do the most good for those in our community dealing with that particular issue, and dealing in the entire region with that particular issue. So good things happening on the horizon with that. So that's just the most recent update. Nothing else.
Thank you. Chief Heber.
Thank you. And on another note, we're going to do some 100% trucker route enforcement operations throughout our city this week at random locations, at random times. I'll report back to you by the end of the week, and we'll post those results on social media. So we'll rotate that in the hopper. Thank you.
Thank you very much. John Schultz?
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Council. Just really quick, I wanted to make an introduction. Sam, if you'd stand up. This is Sam Stump. He's our new city communications specialist. And so, Council, you'll have the opportunity to interact with him a lot as he comes on board. Sam's recently transitioned off of active duty out of Fort Carson, the U.S. Army. He continues to serve. He's currently assigned to the 324th Tactical Psychological Operations Company in the United States Army Reserve as a sergeant. So we are very pleased to have his talent and enthusiasm, and I just wanted to introduce him to everybody this evening and welcome Sam.
And he was a veteran fellow with us as well. How long ago was that, Sam?
Last year.
More neat. Yeah. He's a great fellow for us as well.
Dan?
I'd just like to say I have nothing this evening, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Christy?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Chief?
No, ma'am, thank you.
IT?
Nothing this evening, Madam Mayor, thank you.
All right. City Clerk? And Parks?
Nothing, thank you.
All right. Councilmember Duncan?
I do have a couple of things, and I'll be quick. Our Fountain Youth Council, we're taking applications. We did have a potential member that was sitting in the audience, and so I'm glad that she was here and able to see how our council takes care of business. We're also participating in the parade, the Fall Festival Parade, and more to come, exciting things for our youth council that's coming up. I have a lot of interest from vendors and different companies, so we have a lot of things that are on our calendar for this coming year. Also, Connections for Life, they do deliveries and they're looking for volunteers. So if you would like to give back to the community and deliver meals, please contact them, and their phone number is 719-387-9919, and they're located behind Wendy's. We talked about school, and it has started, and there is a legislative renew the IMATA program, and this program provides up to 6 free therapy sessions for any Colorado youth that needs any type of therapist. So please, if you are in need of any children that you know that are in need, please go on the website iMatter, and they can get up to free therapy sessions for anything that they need, and these are confidential. And I also would like to talk about today, Tamara and I went to the CIRSA luncheon, and to my surprise, I didn't know she was going to be there, but I'm glad she was there. So we got very good compliments about our city manager. The theme today was the new normal, where have we been and where we're going to be. And our city manager was noted for our business contingency plan. And it was, everybody was talking about how Scott has got this program out when we were going through COVID, and, you know, bragging about how great it was and how everybody was stealing the ideas. So again, Scott, I just want to thank you for looking out for the future of Fountain and addressing the pandemic and making sure there's a, you know, we had a measurable difference in our community. I just want to thank you for your forward thinking.
Applegate?
Nothing tonight.
Councilmember Estes?
I just would like to dovetail in on Councilmember Duncan's kudos to our city manager. He was one of the only few in the nation that was forward-thinking enough when we saw COVID coming to have a plan in place. So he was awesome with that, and so just to know that we have some great staff. The other one that I had the takeaway from this meeting was kudos to John Lewis and the finance department. After hearing about some of these towns that cannot pass an audit, and they have not passed an audit for 6 or 7 years, I'm just like, thank you that we don't have to face that. And so.
Can I add something to that? Not only do we pass an audit, we get
awards.
We get CAFR awards every year on our financial reporting.
That's when I was talking to the mayor from this other town about that, and they're like, what? I'm like, no.
They do a great job.
Yeah. The other one I want to give a big shout out to, and the kudos, is Dan and Katie for an excellent ribbon cutting ceremony at our new solar array. So that was a fantastic event, and we're actually going to be generating our own power a little bit, and so that was a wonderful grant and stuff. So just kudos on all of that. Thank you.
Councilmember Hinton?
Yeah, I just want to make the comment, now that we've done the little bit of the hard work of passing this resolution, that the hard work is going to get harder. There's 7 of us, and there's roughly 30,000 of you, our citizens. We need those that want to fight the good fight with us and to spread the good news out there about what the potential this ballot measure could do if passed or when passed. So we're going to need all your help, and we'll be out there beating the streets along with you.
Councilmember Corey?
I want to thank everyone that came to my town hall last Tuesday. I want to thank all the firefighters, police officers, my fellow council members. Thank everybody for showing up. So appreciate it.
Absolutely. Councilmember Rick?
First, already talked to Todd, but kudos to our landscaping contractor. The work they are doing is excellent. I can't tell you the number of positive comments that I've gotten on their performance. Secondly, kudos to the street department, city engineer, and to Todd for your response to the Ohio Railroad crossing incident. I was there the morning after. When I looked at it, I said, we're going to be without this intersection for at least 3 days, and it took, between the railroad and the city staff, less than 12 hours to get it back open. So excellent response for that. And finally, Liz, thank you for coming. Thank you for presenting. If they do have a meeting in Colorado, I would be interested in attending. So if you can keep me in the loop, I would appreciate it. And that's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Duncan had something else?
I'm sorry, one more thing, I didn't turn the page, but we're getting ready to have our legislative session, and I just want us to put on our list Senate Bill 22-120, and they had a meeting today about kratom, and it is a plant. And we need to monitor this bill and see where it's going. It's not an opioid. It's not a drug, but it is not FDA approved, and there's a false pretense that the government approved it. So I just want us to put that on our list.
Yeah, I believe, Troy, you and I have talked about that, potentially running a ordinance on kratom. Yeah. So, yeah. So any information you got today? I believe that it was recorded. I couldn't attend it the last minute, and so I am signed up for the recording so you can get it off the CML website. So, yeah. It already is, and it's already around here locally. Kind of on that, I I know Councilmember Duncan and I attended a Representative Lamborn's town hall meeting, which, man, you did a fantastic job. I understand people want to hire you to be a game show host now, and the good job you did. That's Plan B, right? Anyways, I was wondering if maybe you can work with Scott, maybe we can get like a 15-minute time of him giving just a heads up on some of the information that we learned at that fentanyl conference. These kids need to know that there's no second chance, that one pill is it, no second chance. So it's very scary, the age that's coming down to. And thank you for taking time and doing that seminar. And we did have our first PPACG pre-legislative meeting and talking about some of the stuff that they anticipate coming down next year. And I think we're going to have to be prepared for a pretty hard fight again, them trying to delve into home rule city stuff. And so we just need to really be on our mark. And I think we said our lobbyists more than earned his money last year on some stuff we spoke up. So I think that's very, very worthwhile funding for the money we're spending on that lobbyist. So I just want to announce, and I think there might be some flyers in the back. Todd, did the flyers get in the back for the food pantry?
No, we weren't able to print those off.
Okay, so go on Facebook and look under the city website on Thursday. This Thursday, the 25th, there's a mobile food pantry at Lindamood Park by Care and Share. Last I saw, they might be short a couple of volunteers, so you can go on the Care and Share website and sign up to volunteer. It's really cool. They get to come up to the truck and shop. They don't just get handed a box of foods. They can pick out what their family's actually going to eat when they go home. So check that out on the city website. So that's really exciting that they're able to come again. And hopefully we can get them to come next month too. So with that, Sylvia?
Thank you. I would like to request an executive session pursuant to CR Section 24-6-424 for the purpose of review, approval, and amendment of executive session minutes, and pursuant to CR Section 24-6-424B for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions.
Okay, we have a request from the city clerk to go into executive session. Do we have anybody who'd like to make a motion? Councilmember Estes?
I move that we can go into executive session.
Councilmember Hinton?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, please vote.
Seven yes, motion carried.
Okay, we are going to go ahead and adjourn this session, but again,
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor. On the agenda, there's a typo. Our next meeting is the 13th, not the 14th. I know you typically announce when the next session is.
on the 14th. I have 14th.
It's the 13th.
Oh, is it? You
Yes.
don't want to come Wednesday? And
No.
Tuesday and Wednesday? come
Not
on.
really.
Okay. All righty. So remember, we're going to go ahead and adjourn, and then we're going to go right into the GID, and then we'll take a break after that. So I'm adjourning this meeting. The next one is September 13th, 2022. We are adjourned. We're open.
Madam Mayor, can you hold just a moment? We have to reset the recorder in order to GID.
I'm on a roll.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Thanks for catching it.
I just wanted to make sure.
We're ready when you are.
Oh, where's Corey? He just went to the restroom. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open it.
Corey.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open a meeting. Let's see. First reading of ordinance number 1779, GID1, an ordinance of the Fountain General Improvement District Number 1, City of Fountain, Colorado, including certain properties sometimes known as Singer Subdivision, addition into the Fountain General Improvement District Number 1, City of Fountain, Colorado. I don't have a name.
I'll start, Mayor,
Okay.
if that's okay with you.
Can we close the door?
Yeah, how do we grab the door? It's just a little loud. It's still an open session. So let me give you kind of a quick overview. I think this is the first, if I'm not mistaken, the first application for GID1 that this entire council has seen. And, you know, sometimes I feel like the chef from Ratatouille. It's really Christie's the genius pulling the strings. So if you got real questions, we can ask her too. But so GID1 and GID2 are different, right? So GID1, the purpose of it is any real new annexations that come into the city are required to join GID1. It's 12 mills. And mostly the purpose is to fund parks and recreation and public safety, right? So like when Scott kind of mentioned that about the fire station, that's what those funds are for. This is completely separate and different than GID2, which kind of the council has adopted a policy of not allowing any more into that GID. So I wanted to explain the difference, kind of that high level overview. And so this is an application that is kind of the standard process to go into that GID1 for any new annexations into the city. And so with that, if there's any questions or clarifications, happy to answer them, or one of the, at least four of us should be able to answer the question.
This is just that small piece that didn't annex in the first time, the kind of square, or the whole thing?
It's the 22-acre parcel that's part of, or has been incorporated into the Corvallis development up at Fontaine and Mark Shuffle. It's
Okay,
the
I know
annexation
where
that
it is.
recently.
Since it came in two separate times, I was trying to make sure if it's the whole piece.
It's just
or
the small piece, not the larger 275-acre parcel.
Okay, all right. All right, anybody else have any other questions? Seeing none, anybody want to make,
I have a question.
Councilmember
Is the rest
Almost
of
made
that
it.
Singer Ranch, are they already part of GID1?
They are not.
Can I maybe, I want to add one thing to that. The reason why is because they had already been annexed, and so GID1 impacts any property that annexes to the city after
It tied into the annexation plan that was adopted in late 2006. So GID1 was formed in 2007. So any annexations moving forward requires, as part of their condition of approval, that they must petition for inclusion.
Councilmember Duncan?
So Scott, I'm one of those people that when you say we're getting money, that when we leave in the morning, I want to see it in the bank. So you had said that we were going to get funding in a couple of years. So what do you mean by a couple of years?
We actually receive funding every year through the property tax mill levy since the creation of it. Now, you got to remember, at the creation of it, development was pretty much crashing, and so there was very little revenue that was coming in for a bunch of years when it began. But as development started kickstarting again, particularly in those annexed areas, we started collecting. So if you recall, a couple of years ago, we did a major remodel of Firehouse 2. That was all funded through GID1. Yeah, so those funds have been coming in and being collected. Todd was just asking me how much total we have in it right now. I don't recall, but we'll get that to the council because I know Chris is going to want to come and talk to the council here in the near future. When I say near future, probably within the next year, to talk to the council about plans moving forward for Firehouse. And so that'll be one of the resources we'll bring. So I'll provide a report to the council, maybe even in this week's or next week's weekly update, just to give us an idea where we are with that. Because the first 1.5 million or 1.7 million is 7, thank you, is for actually public safety facilities or capital equipment. So we track that. That's the way it was set up, and so that's where those funds will be spent. Now, we'll probably end up spending more than that, but that's just the minimum that we could spend out of that. That would be a portion of the revenues that we would be pulling together, because the council's aware that we have this public safety sales tax increment that the city council created a number of years ago, where they take a quarter of every new retail business that comes into town, and a quarter of the retail sales tax that's generated from that goes specifically into like police vehicles and police equipment and potentially facilities. So that's another potential resource. But we pulled down a big chunk of that money when we but remodeled Firehouse 2 and made all those changes. Yes.
Any further questions? All right. Oh, did you have a question, Richard? No. Okay, Councilmember Applegate?
Yeah, I move to approve ordinance 1779 GID 1.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Councilmember Duncan?
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Seven yes, motion carried.
Okay, I'm declaring this public session closed for GID 1. We're going to take a 10-minute break. We'll come back at 8:25, and then we will go into executive session. Oh, she was giving me this look like, what?